There are many things to remember about 1989. Mullet hairstyles, Tiananmen Square, Kylie Minogue, Ford Escorts, but one of the main things is that credit unions came to Wigan.
The credit union started off going back to 1988, and there was lots of different, it was very active Platt Bridge at the time, lots of different community groups, and I was the treasurer of about 6 or 7 of them. But on this day, one of the neighbourhood workers, Anne Harvey, came in and told us about credit unions because we had an active loan shark that was operating in the area. So she went round to all the groups. There was about 8 different groups that she went to, and we decided that we were going to have a meeting to talk a bit further about credit unions. So Anne invited Len Nuttall, who was from Abcol, to come and talk to us. And Len used to be in Skelmersdale Credit Union, and they were the first credit union to be registered in England and Great Britain. So we decided that we wanted to get rid of this loan shark, and we wanted to have a credit union. And we were told that we'd have to train for about 12 months, and Len would train us. So we did lots of different things like the credit union law, we did bookkeeping, and it was in the old paper format, how to operate loans, how to run a committee, like literally everything that you needed to run a credit union, and that's what we did. And it did take us 12 months roughly. So we finally got our registration through on the 7th of July in 1989. So the registered office of the credit union was 80 to 90 Ribble Road in Platt Bridge, which it had been a block of flats, but the council took it over, and in there you had youth service, you had the neighbourhood workers, social services, the housing officers downstairs, they had a health team that worked there. So there was a lot of different groups in there that could help support the credit union. Well, this picture was taken roughly July 89, August 89. Ian McCartney was the MP. He looks very young there. He looks like a schoolboy, in fact. You got Audrey Bennett, who was the mayor of Wigan, Mayoress of Wigan. Mary Hurst was the first president of the credit union. Kathy Mallon was one of the collectors. And there was myself with my eyes closed, as usual. And at the time, I was the assistant treasurer of the credit union. And the collection points were based in the community. So we had the neighbourhood office, we had the family centre, and the community centre, Tramlines Youth Club. As you can see from that photograph, we had cash tins, and that's how we operated. So we would go there with a sheet of paper to write the collection sheet to write people's names on and how much they paid. The money would go into the tin, and that'd be it. So there'd be a desk, you were one side, the member was at the other side, and anybody could walk in from the public. There was never any trouble, we'd never get robbed or anything like that. It was just a real good community spirit.
Working there?
It was purely volunteers. So at the beginning you had to have 22 names to register as a credit union. It was 21 plus a secretary. The names were all pulled out of a hat to see what number you were going to have. And I pulled out number 18.
I was first introduced to credit unions by my mother in Northern Ireland. She encouraged all her children to open accounts, and she was a director of our local credit union. When she became ill, she practically twisted my brother's arms and me to go and act as directors in our local credit union. We volunteered, but we were told to. I first became aware of credit unions looking to employ people way back in the 1980s, at the end of the 1980s. I applied for a number of jobs up and down the country, and Wigan community credit unions decided to employ me. So I went over and I joined a colleague called Julie Keegan at that time, and together we then went out to develop credit unions. Initially there was only one credit union, Platt Bridge, and we got that registered and up and running. And then we went out to see if we could develop any more credit unions. By the time we were finished, we had 6 credit unions, all small, basically community credit unions, and one of them was the employee credit union, but it was also small. So over a period of about 6 years, we continued to develop credit unions, but all the funding was directed at setting them up, and there was no funding available to keep them running. So the credit unions that we set up were based on housing estates. They were run by, and all the members came from those particular housing estates. And these housing estates were picked because they were low income estates. The people on these estates were mainly unemployed or on low incomes. So there was no money in the estates to actually set up and develop the credit unions. People couldn't save. They appreciated borrowing the money, but they weren't able to save much. So these credit unions over the years were destined to fail because they couldn't get enough capital. Eventually it was decided that the model that we were using to develop the credit unions wasn't going to work. So what we had to do was redesign the credit unions to make them bigger so that they could attract more people and cover larger areas.
So I came to Akuda in 2001 as a development worker. At the time there was, I think, 5 developing or developed small community credit unions, and Paul Jones at Liverpool John Moores University had done a report and he'd looked into whether credit unions were serving the communities effectively, and basically he said no, they weren't, that they needed to be more professional, they needed branch offices, they needed IT, and they needed to cover larger common bonds. We embraced what Paul Jones said, and we got support from ERDF and the Neighbourhood Renewal Fund to bring together 3 community credit unions, which was Platt Bridge, North West Wigan and Pemberton. We developed a shadow board which brought the 3 credit unions together so that they were all equally represented for the new credit union. We managed to find some premises in Ince at Smithy Green, and we begged, stole and borrowed furniture to fill those premises. So the borough-wide credit union was born. At the time there was probably a couple of hundred active members between the 3 credit unions, and I think they'd got about £12,000 in the bank. But onwards and upwards we went. We had no staff. It was all volunteers supported by the development agency because the credit union couldn't get funding, so the ERDF and the NRF money came to Akuda rather than to the credit unions.
One fascinating story was when we were starting the credit unions up, we noticed that an awful lot of people were joining from the same street, and we couldn't understand why. So we eventually tracked down the person concerned. She was somebody we had lent money to, and she was so happy and so delighted about this. She went round the neighbourhood, door to door, and convinced people to come and join the credit union. It was really delightful the way she did it. She became a volunteer in the credit union and continued to serve us for many, many years.
I've always known about credit unions. In Ireland, almost 3/4 of the population of Ireland are members of a credit union, so it's just like a rite of passage. When you are old enough, you open a credit union account. So I opened my credit union account when I was 17 years old. Had maybe 1 or 2 loans before I got married and moved away. When we moved to the UK in 2000, that was the end of that. I just didn't think there were credit unions in the UK. I asked people when I got here, nobody knew what credit unions were. And I thought, well, it's going to be much harder for me to be able to get the things that I was able to get in advance before. So I could get a loan and then pay the item back. Now I had to save up for them in advance. So one day the Borough of Life landed on my doorstep, and in there was an article about Unify Credit Union in Ince, and I nearly dropped the newsletter. And I was there the following morning at 9 o'clock waiting for them to open with my ID and some money to start saving. There was a collection point near my house in Lee, and so the following week I started to attend that collection point, and the supervisor was there that week doing a supervisory visit on the collection, and he was telling me that they needed volunteers, and so I thought that's something that I would really like to do, and I called them when I got home. And the following day I went up to speak to Angela and Pauline, who were running Wakuda at the time, which was the development agency. And we had a good old chat, and they wanted to know where my skills lied and what I would like to do. And I just wanted to learn a little bit of everything at the time. So originally I was trained on the front desk like a member service assistant. I did that for a while. Then I helped out at some of the community collection points in Abram, and they wanted to open a new collection point in Worsley Mains. And so that was what I would do on a Wednesday or Thursday morning. And then I'd come to the office to do some work later on. And I just remember that first whole year I was attending college as well as doing voluntary work, that I had other ideas about what I wanted to do for work after I finished doing adult college. But I just really loved what I was doing. I loved what I was doing, and I just said to Angela one day, I would just absolutely love to work here. And she says, okay, well, we'll bear that in mind, with a smile on her face. And then it was almost 1 year to the day from being a volunteer that a position became about. We were given money from the Growth Fund. That was kind of the making of the credit union as it is today. They funded money to us to be able to deliver loans to people who wouldn't normally have had them before. And when we delivered that into the community, we realised we needed more staff, and we had to open a second office. So over the years, things grew very quickly. So that went from an extra staff to an extra loan officer to a full office to a next office to the next office, and then our fourth office.
So Charlie Council, to support us when we were first moving into Charlie, allowed us to use their cash office in the council office as a collection point 1 day a week, and from that developed into the council agreeing to support us to open a branch in Charlie. That was the leader of the council when we opened that branch at 29 Market Street, Charlie, and it's gone from strength to strength.
We've had a couple of people that have been in with loan sharks, and that had a big impact. We actually won an award here in Chorley. So the award was, we had a loan shark that was operating in the area, and we were picking up, when we were looking at people's bank statements, that quite a few people were paying money to this person. So we reported it to the illegal money lending team in Birmingham. They watched him for a couple of years and caught him doing it, so he actually got sent to prison. So all those people didn't have to pay that loan back because it was illegal anyway. It made it. So we actually got an awarded, it was called a highly commended award from the illegal money lending team.
So we received funding from the Lloyds Banking Group to see us through the merger with Welcome Credit Union, and we were invited down to the Houses of Parliament by our MP Yvonne Favard, who's part of the all-party parliamentary group for credit unions, in recognition of the partnership working we'd done with Lloyds, and Peter Deacon came down with us. So Welcome Credit Union had decided initially, when the merger had taken place, to create Unify, not to become part of the newly formed credit union. As time went on, the directors of Welcome felt that it would be best for both credit unions that there'd be one credit union to represent the whole of Wigan. And pictured with Lisa Nandy are Diane Shanzel, who was the manager of Welcome Credit Union, and Chris Reedy, who's now a director of Unify Credit Union.
Cool.
We nominated Pat, who's been a lifelong volunteer for the credit union, for an award. It was presented by Camilla, if I remember rightly. Pat went off dressed in all the finery to receive the award to thank her for all the volunteering she'd done for the credit union, because she stuck with us for 30 years. So as part of an initiative and some work that was being done by John Moores University, looking at best practices with credit unions across Europe, in 2015 we were visited for the first time by representatives from Romanian credit unions who came to our credit union to look at best practice for governance and what we were doing with children's savings schemes. And it's really interesting, since then I've been contacted by one of those who said that they've now adopted a business plan for their credit union based on our business plan, and have just launched a school savings scheme, and he's promised he'll keep me updated with that. A joint marketing initiative was launched in October, the first Credit Union Awareness Week across Greater Manchester, where people were advised not to be spooked by rip-off lenders. The Consortium of Credit Unions, also known as Soundpound, are still working together now to raise awareness of credit unions across Greater Manchester. We've got a dedicated feeder page which will allow people to visit the site and then link to their own credit union from that, and the whole of Greater Manchester is covered by credit unions. Unify was recognised by the Filene Awards for outstanding achievement in 3 areas: the work that we've done in schools, the media campaign that we'd done in partnership with the consortium members, and also for the film that we'd produced to cover the work that we've done.